Cool. All right, I think we're online. Just give me 1 second. Right, shall we give it just a couple of minutes? We're live on Facebook now, so just give it a couple of minutes just to wait for a couple of people to come online first. I know.
Yeah, sure.
I know some people out of the group are really keen to get to listen to you today, mate. So most of the guys that are going to be watching it right now will probably know me or have heard of me in Preston. So it's probably going to be worth, I don't know, spending 5 minutes getting into a bit about you, what you do for work, because obviously, guys, by the way, Cliff used to be one of my mentors that taught me a lot. So as soon as he agreed to get on, I was really excited to get him to share a load of useful stuff for you guys and things I've learned in the past and hopefully some new stuff. So Cliff, I'll let you take it away, mate. Just tell the guys a bit about what you do, and then what your sort of history is with everything and how you've got to here now.
All right. Well, as James so eloquently put it, I'm Cliff. And I suppose my key role, along with Marta, my wife, is we work with high performers that essentially have sacrificed their health for success in some way, shape or form. So a lot of people we work with are very successful financially, a lot of status, all this kind of stuff, but in some way have done the very long hours, sacrificed relationships, wherever it might be, and ended up in a bit of a jam. And the reason, I suppose, I got into this and why I did it was purely because of my journey, I suppose. And, I'll give you the fast forward version of it because we'll be here all night otherwise. But essentially, I was born with a 64 degree scoliosis in my spine and kyphosis. So I lost 6 inches of height, had 3 major spinal operations by the age of 3. I was then diagnosed when I was 15 with autoimmune disease. 17, a brain tumor, 18, meningitis after the tumor, and essentially now I sit here nearly 11 years into med-free of everything and we've helped people in 25 countries around the world, hundreds and hundreds of different people on personal consulting programs and everything. And mine and Marta's thing is the ARA method, so awareness, responsibility, action. It shows people how to rewire essentially their mind and their body, because most people either do the mindset work or they do the physical work. And what they don't realize is that you can be doing the mindset work all day, but if your underlying biochemistry in your body is out, you'll be feeding inflammation to the mind, which will make you feel negative. So, and vice versa, you can do all the work on the body, but not do anything on the mind. And as soon as one hiccup comes up, like what we're facing right now, then, the whole world falls apart.
Yeah, and we've since this has come out, we've surprisingly I've kept my cool. I probably would have been the same story a good few years ago. But guys, I can completely vouch for what Cliff's saying now. It's dealing with stuff in certain ways, isn't it? And not sort of like just taking like hits everywhere all the time emotionally, and just keeping you cool through situations and keeping clarity is one of probably the biggest things I learned from you. I believe that always does come back from time to time, but you learn to deal with it on a better level.
The thing is the biggest issue we have nowadays is people pretend once you've done this work that problems no longer exist, right? It doesn't matter who you are right now with the whole thing that's going on in lockdown or coronavirus, however you want to look at it, everybody's affected. But everyone's affected on varying different degrees, levels of what's going on. But the way you respond is what's going to make it better or worse for you. So it could be a fact that you can't go to work and earn money, but if you respond in high stress, panic, anxiety, you're not going to be open to any solutions to go and find a different way of earning it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But if you're someone who can be a responder and see it as a fact, and be like, yeah, okay, well, my money has been taken away. It seems a little unfair, but hey, I can moan about it, or I can find a way to go look at a solution. Then all of a sudden you take a lot of weight and a lot of pressure off yourself. And I'm not pretending for a moment that's easy. I've been doing this 11 years. But what I would say is that fundamentally we have 2 mindsets. We have a problem solver or a problem creator.
And that problem creating, a lot of the guys that I've seen online coming on right now from the gym, they'll probably resonate with this. And I was trying to teach them. It's like, right, okay, so let's go strip it way back down to basics. And if someone's been working hard at something for a week, it's the first week of the nutrition plan, or it's the first month, Then they have a week where they don't get the measurements they want, they don't get the weight loss they want, and then rather than looking for that solution straight away, it's like, I'm no good at this, I can't do it. It's not diets don't work for me, you know. And when you're in that mindset, it tends to you tend to sort of break yourself down emotionally, don't you? Would you agree on that?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing to really consider is that we have pathways in our brain. So I do a little bit of neurobiology and stuff like this with people. And to keep it really simple, we have a pathway in our brain called the dopamine reward system. And very plain and simple is that we nowadays in the Western world are all dopamine junkies. That's why people buy into quick fixes, 3-day fasts, or, you know, they get addicted to things like sugar and things like this, because anything that can trigger the dopamine reward system can lift you up. And so what happens is when, say, people are in a program for a week and they're really motivated, they're doing really good, and they start seeing results, they're getting that dopamine hit. Mm-hmm. So like they're getting lifted up. And then as they get further in, because the stimulus doesn't change as quick as what it did initially, you don't get as much dopamine release. Mm-hmm. So then what happens is that starts leading to a narrative in our contextual brain that goes, this isn't good enough, this is too slow, I should be doing better. When the reality is there's probably no evidence for it should be faster. But because we're not getting the same hit of being lifted up, we think it's not good. So that's why context is such an important part of making someone understand about progression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting point. That it's like I think we all do it though. Like I'm saying, it shouldn't be like
everyone.
This. It should be like this. And actually, when you take a step back, like, oh, what situation should and shouldn't, you know? Like at the minute, everyone's like, this can't be happening with what's going on in the world. So sort of, I'm not trying to make this live feed about that today, but we're looking at ways to deal with it and how it does impact us on a daily basis, because it's probably the biggest thing being talked about at the minute, you know. And everyone says it shouldn't.
You can't turn on a TV without seeing it, right? So
that's it. And it's like, well, this shouldn't be happening, this is awful. And you know what, it is happening. And I think it'd be really good to share with the viewers right now, like how right now, for someone that's never done much work like this before, like I know it's second nature to me now. I completely understand it at a level where I go, I don't need to respond to it in that way, just accept it and things. And it's not quite as easy as that for people that have never even gone into mindset work.
No, for sure.
I think so. What advice for people stressing, the worrying, money, family, the world's gone mad? What advice would you be giving? What would you give to them right now? To start with at a lower level, basically.
Well, I think the easiest thing as an entry point, especially if it's guys, like I don't know about any of your guys that are watching, but like I was, I never even cried when I was told I had a brain tumor. Right. So when it comes to emotionally shut down, like that was pretty much me. So like it was easier that they'd say to prise blood out of a stone than it would be to get tears out of me. Mm-hmm. So the thing is with it, I totally get where guys are coming from, because we've been brought up in this old hat society where showing any kind of vulnerability, as in AK, I don't have the absolute answer, is a form of weakness. Mm-hmm. And so that stereotype doesn't help. Because if you think of men, we're very cut and dry a lot of the time. So if someone comes to us with a problem, we want to solve it. So then when uncertain times come up like this, around family and money and work and all these kind of things, it feels very threatening to us. And this is why we shut down. Because we don't have an answer immediately in the moment, it threatens our identity as a man, because we're used to be able to solving problems. Mm-hmm. And so then what happens is we get threatened and we get overwhelmed, and that's where we start making bad choices. Because the thing is we want to escape that feeling, because no one wants to feel bad, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where people binge eat, it's where people go to alcohol or cocaine, like some of our clients did, or whatever it might be, because it takes the temporary feeling away. And for some people it's numbness, for some people it's, escape the intensity of the overwhelm, and allows them to calm just a little bit. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But if we have the ability just to be the observer to start with, without doing anything too in depth. Mm-hmm. So like one thing I get everybody to do to start with is nothing too woo-woo or too out there, is when anyone wakes up in the morning, I always just say to them, let's spend 2 minutes just paying attention to the speed of your thoughts. Right? And the reason I get them to do that is because if you wake up and your head is racing straight away, and a majority of that narrative is negative, what actions are then you going to take throughout that day? You're not going to move very proactively towards your goal. You're going to pick more caffeine, you're going to pick more stimulants, you're going to pick things that don't serve your body as much. These are all going to build up, make you feel more sluggish, they're going to make you feel drowsy, they're going to, throw you really off the track that you're aiming to, this thing you say you want to get to, which is counterintuitive, right? So I think if people could be in a position where they just start by paying attention to the thoughts that they're having, because most men are really hard on themselves. Like, they'll call themselves a shithead, they'll call themselves all sorts of derogatory names. But like, I'll challenge any guy that's listening to this live stream now to tell me what their next thought is going to be before they have it. Not one of them can do it.
No.
And that's because we don't have free will over that thought. So our thoughts are a production of our nervous system interacting with the files in our brain, essentially. So what happens is that a thought appears, but what we do is we attach to it. We're like, oh, I'm a shithead, I lost my job, or, I didn't lose the amount of weight I should have. And we attach to these thoughts, and they're all based on past and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, if you can pause in that moment and go, well, hang on a minute, is that really true? Like, am I really a shithead because I didn't lose 2 pounds last week? Is that totally true? Then all of a sudden you can question the narrative. And then it creates space for you to go, well, actually, what would I prefer to think of myself? What action would I prefer to take? And it allows, without too much complexity, to open a bit of space for people.
And not just reacting to everything that's coming into us at all times,
Yeah.
And I think...
Well, fighting fires, men try and pride themselves in fighting fires when they just end up exhausted, burnt out, frustrated, like...
Yeah. That's it. Like, it starts sort of towards the end of last week after Friday. I'm like, right, we need to do this, we need to do that. Or, like, with the team on the course, it does come back. And then Saturday I chilled out over the weekend, and it's like, right, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All we can do right now is wait until we can reopen our gyms, for example. So we've got 3 locations. We've got two very established ones with sort of 400 members working out of it, and then one that we'd had like 20 pre-signed up, nearly ready to go to start, and then overnight like that, we get turned off, and normally, like a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have dealt with that, I don't think. But now, like, straight away this week, we found solutions. We're keeping our members really happy. We're doing everything we possibly can within our power, and we're starting to call clients every week now. And when you're relaxed and think about a process rather than just reacting and responding to things that are coming at you all day, it's like, right, processing and dealing with it accordingly, and without that time just to process it, you can't make any logical decisions. You're basing it off emotion and not a long-term thing. You're right?
Basing it out of fear most of the time. That's the biggest problem is, when you take a decision out of fear, it never ends up good. Like, in the short term, it might feel like some relief, but you'll do something that compromises morals or your values. And when you do that, that's going to come back and bite you in the arse pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we see, for example, we see like people like that. We got told to shut down last week. Then there's people doing boot camps because it's outside. They're doing them outside, and it's like, that's out of panic. They would have never ran an outdoor boot camp in their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can look at it in similar situations like that, right?
Well, the thing is, everyone's in some way in their mind trying to find a solution, but a lot of businesses run month to month, right? So the thing is with it, if someone gets shut down, the likelihood of them reopening their doors is very minimal. Do you see what I mean? So that's where panic sets in. And so then they make these decisions, which was obvious that they're never going to allow, boot camps at big sizes or anything like this, because it would just fall within social gatherings. But the thing is in their logical brain, they're like, well, we could keep them all 2 meters apart and all this kind of stuff. It's just, do you see what I mean? Like, the way the restrictions were coming and how strong they were getting, they're still not finished. Like, that's the thing to understand. They're still not finished. Like, there'll be more for sure. And that's not to put fear into anyone. It's just, you have to look at the patterns.
Yeah.
You only have to look at what they've done in France and Germany. Like, France and Germany right now, you can only go out for 20 minutes at a time, one person at a time.
Crazy.
Do you see what I mean? but the thing is that it's just they're trying to flatten the curve, and the way they're trying to flatten the curve is essentially employing this lockdown, but a more relaxed lockdown, and hoping that people use their common sense in order to not need stronger contingencies. Because the sad thing about this as well is that a government at some point has to be re-elected or re-voted for. So the last thing they want to do is screw this up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the thing is, they don't want to be seen as putting the hammer down as hard as they can to start with if it doesn't look like the most popular choice. So if in the opinion polls, that's not what people want, the government don't want to be seen to do that because people will remember it. So we've got to remember this isn't just a health epidemic, so to speak. It's also political in decision making as well, and that's what people are not really grasping.
Yeah. Yes, it's not. Yeah, I totally understand, and it sort of leaves everyone in limbo, though, doesn't it? It's like, well, if we all just stuck with it, it'd be over quicker, and we're done with quicker with it. So
you only had to look at the London Tube this morning; it was rammed, right?
Oh yeah, I saw that. So you just moved back to London now, haven't you?
Not in London. We're actually it's not a funny story, but we've rented a place in Greenwich.
Oh, in Greenwich.
We're meant to move there on the 2nd, but I don't know if that's going to happen because
probably staying away from there for now as well.
Yeah, right. And plus, also the other issue is everything's going to be closed, and we don't know if the apartment will be finished. So we might not be at the moment. So we'll see.
Cool. So a lot of we had a conversation last week about the future of everything, and obviously I had questions for you because I know you read into a lot of all this stuff. Now, what's your stance on the actual? I'm not saying this isn't a severe case, but do you think everyone's panicking and reacting to this so much when it's not really needed? I know I'm not taking away the seriousness of it, but do you think people that feel like they're in a lot more danger than they actually are, or what are your opinions on that?
Well, the thing is with it, I did a whole 90-minute free training. If your guys want it, I'll absolutely share it, all on the virus, what it is, what it isn't, how to protect yourself, all that kind of stuff. So it's quite deep, but it covers all them kind of areas. But what we have, the biggest problem we have is media and what is being released to people. Okay. So we have a client who, let's say, works quite high up in Whitehall, and, they know a lot more that's already going to happen compared to what's being said. Does that make sense? And this is why we know this whole drip feeding thing is political as much as it is, for the virus. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying the virus isn't severe, but we can't pretend it's going to wipe out 30 or 40 million people. We already know, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the physical numbers, the WHO are still scaring everybody. So the World Health Organization, they're still scaring everybody by leaving 3.4% as the death rate up there. But if you start looking at the total cases and then break it down by country, you're already seeing these numbers drop to nearer 1% and under 1%. And so the flu, normally on a seasonal flu, you're normally at about 0.1% of death. With this strain of coronavirus, because we've had coronavirus before, right? There's different strains of it. And so likelihood is 70% of people watching this have coronavirus, have had it.
Yeah.
But it's just a different strain right now. So the COVID-19 is what we're talking about. So this is going to be trickier for people to handle. But what we need to understand is that if we had the proper immune function and we have the necessary ways of doing it, this is why exercise is probably one of the most potent things at this moment in time for your immune system. If we had the necessary immune function, which I can explain in the basics, then essentially the threat would be much less. But what you've got at this moment in time is people talking themselves into panic. And when you talk yourself into panic, you lower your immune system. Because you trigger the fight or flight response, the sympathetic nervous system, right?
Yeah.
And therefore you're going to basically imbalance your immune system, which makes you more vulnerable. There's a lot to be said on it from a point of view of how viruses work. One of the biggest things I'm seeing at the moment is misinformation. People talking about it in the media as if it was a bacteria, not a virus, because there's a fundamental difference. Bacteria is a living organism. It's like a living organism. A virus isn't. A virus is genetic material, DNA. And the way a virus works is it injects itself into your cell, and then that's what sends the immune system off. But the problem you have is that you've got all these people recommending all these antibacterials as supplements, and it won't do nothing to a virus.
And I went into a shop the other day, probably over the weekend. So like, can you wash your hands when you come? Antibacterial soap, like.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with it is that, crazy, like, right? I totally understand in some ways what they're trying to do from a prevention point of view of how we could put it on our mouths or our lips or whatever it might be. But the thing is with it is that if you had the necessary protection, so if we look at COVID-19, the main place it's affecting people is their lungs, their respiratory system. Okay. So if you think about this, when we breathe in, we should mainly breathe through our nose, not our mouth. But many people breathe through their mouth because they're quite stressed and they're quite shallow breathers. So they breathe through their mouth, and that doesn't have a filtration system really. And the problem with that is that your first point of protection in your body would be your tonsils, if you still have them. Right? So your tonsils have immune cells on them and the ability to recognize pathogens, viruses, bacteria, all this kind of stuff. So to raise the immune response. So then that would be your first point. And then as it goes down into your body, what happens, you then have a lining, a very thin lining on your lungs. And that lining is called MALT, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. And to keep it top level is essentially that would protect you. But what we're seeing is all these people that are immune compromised, that layer of protection isn't really there for them. So the virus is able to get into the cells of the body, and that's where havoc starts coming. And you've got to remember, most of these people are dying of secondary issues like pneumonia.
So I've read some things. I'm trying to sort of be careful what I'm reading into. Because 33% of cases won't even have any symptom. So go on, your body deals with it and it leaves.
80% of people will have no symptoms or totally minor, to a point that it wouldn't even feel like a full-blown cold.
Right. Cool.
And then from there, you then have a percentage of people. So you've got to work out how these percentages work. So 80% people would never really be affected with it, never going to really have any real symptoms.
So they're only testing people actually getting symptoms though, right? So these numbers aren't even legit then, really. So
and think about if people are at home and they've got symptoms, they're not going to get tested if they're just light symptoms. So, but this is also part of the way the media scares people, because if you're only using the number of infected and dying, you can keep that percentage higher. Does that make sense? It looks more scary. But if you look at it, how slow America have been to test, how slow other countries have been to test, there's, I've been speaking to mentors and different people, and we reckon the infection rate at some point will end up at like 1 in 3. But most of them will have no symptoms, but they'll be carriers. Does that make sense? So the thing is with it is that, should we be scared that the world's going to end? Well, no, because it had already ended likely by now, if that was a killer virus that's going to wipe us all out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But is it something we should take serious for the people that are vulnerable? Yes. Could we have probably have done it differently earlier? Yes. Yeah. Like if we'd have seen what came out of China to start with, and the UK had been much stricter on flights from China to the UK, and then literally quarantining elderly, vulnerable people, cancer patients, for instance, people high risk vulnerables, people who have had transplants, all these people that are now being told to stay inside for 12 weeks. If we'd have done that and then allowed people to get on with it, we would have still had an outbreak of the virus. But the death rates would have been nothing compared to likely what we're facing now. Because we already know that if 80% of people won't have any symptoms or ill, they're not going to just be walking around the street being really sick, right?
Yeah.
The problem is when they get into contact with people who are susceptible. I did a video on this on my timeline yesterday. I entitled the video, "Why are young people now getting sick from the coronavirus?" Because, everyone, the average age in Italy of dying is like over 70 and all this kind of stuff. So what we're seeing now is doctors and nurses getting sick with the coronavirus. Well, people would say, yes, well, it makes sense. You know, they're young, but why would they get it? If they're exposed, if 80% of them are exposed, they shouldn't get it. But what people forget is that your immune system is potently regulated by sleep. So these doctors and nurses that are doing all this selfless work, working 12, 15-hour shifts, getting a few hours sleep, coming back into work, they're completely annihilating their sleep patterns. Mm-hmm. And when we sleep, that's one of our primary ways of resetting and clearing the potential risk that we have. Mate, so this is why you're seeing young people basically start picking it up as well.
And this is the thing, like I've like, say if I've been doing like 14-hour days for a week on the trot. I'm going in hard, training for an hour and a half a day, do ridiculous sessions with my trainer Sheldon, and then after a couple of weeks, I'll start to feel ill myself. If I'm only getting 5 or 6 hours sleep a night, then you get the usual sore throat and you start getting a cold. And that's because your immune system is compromised, isn't it? So it doesn't just go for this. It's anything.
You're basically living in debt. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? That's what it is. Like, that's why we have so many tools nowadays, like HRV and all different things that we can check our recovery rates and all this kind of stuff, because we now know so much more from the science of recovery and, you know, performance, that it's not less is more necessarily. It's more is better when you have capacity to do it. It's just that in times like this, most people are very lost with the high stress that's going on, and their temptation is to exercise harder. Mm. When the problem with that is it will pull their immune system down further. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, you need to exercise 100%, because the primary way that this virus is going to be dealt with is via your lymphatic system. And your lymphatic system doesn't have the ability like the heart does to pump things around the body. So it has to be contracted manually. So when we bend our legs or contract our calves or, you know, flex our arms or we breathe, we move the lymph around our body. And that lymph is then sent to the lymphatic nodes. And that's where your immune system, your adaptive immune system, clears that virus, basically. Mm-hmm. But if you don't move and you're sedentary and you just sit on your ass in this time, you're going to be super susceptible again. Yeah.
And it's not things like that, not just from a mental, not just from a health point of view, but your mental health with all this as well. If we are going to be, we are already, we're going to get stricter rules coming in where we actually can't leave the house at all. Then there's the one thing you need to be doing, that is some sort of movement, because you're not going to be doing it in much other ways, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, you know, you raise a really valid point, and one of my mentors mentioned this last week, and he said, I don't know why no one's talking about this. He said, we're putting everybody in self-isolation. And he said, you know, if you think of the NHS last year, it was the first year they spent more money on loneliness and mental health than they did on obesity. Mm-hmm. So that should give us an idea that putting everybody into self-isolation like that is one of the reasons why they didn't do it straight away. If you listen to the chief medical officer for the UK, he actually mentioned that. Yeah. And he said, you know, we have these issues. And the problem is that that's why it's being so encouraged to reach out to people, to phone people, to have meetings virtually or whatever it might be. It's not the same connection. But if you don't do that, I think the secondary problem as a result of this virus will be just spiraling numbers of depression, anxiety, suicide, you know, mental health issues. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think have you seen any stats recently? I'm sure I saw something the other day about already there's been increased massively, like for reach out on mental health and things like that, actually increasing suicides, you know. I know it sounds really bad, but I've seen videos of like people in different countries with the virus jumping out the window, you know, which is absolutely awful. And
the thing is with it is that I think we've lost perspective. You know, as someone like me who's had a brain tumor, 3 major operations of my spine, meningitis, which is a bacteria of the brain, autoimmune disease where I was on drugs constantly, just bleeding all the time. Like, for me, a virus is nothing more than something that we just get to handle. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But because we've created hysteria and panic about it, this is why it feels like this big boogeyman that's coming to get everybody. But if everyone can just understand that the very likelihood, if you haven't got a text message from the NHS or you haven't got a letter to stay indoors for 12 weeks, you've absolutely got full control of how you're going to respond to this. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I mean? Even those people but the more high risk could still do a lot with it. But, you know, when you've got people who are heavily obese, you've got people that are type 2 diabetic, or you've got people that are high blood pressure, like these people, there's so much we can do now to be proactive, to help, to get them moving, eating well, you know, keep them on top of their mental game, that they shouldn't have to worry at all. But because of sitting and constantly ruminating on the same thoughts, watching the news, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. When the reality is, you know, I must have done over the last week and a half, this probably is my 16th, 17th interview that I've done from places in America, Australia, Europe, UK, just trying to let people understand that there is the facts of the virus. If that makes sense, it is a virus. Yes, it's a new strain. It's going to kill more people than the normal flu because it's a new strain. But the reality is you will build immunity. Like the way the human adaptive immune system works is once you're exposed to something, your adaptive immune system is like a memory. So once you're exposed to something, what happens is then your adaptive immune system has a memory. So if it gets exposed to it again, it doesn't have the same effectiveness on us. So it doesn't affect us. Like, think about this. When you have a virus, I don't mean this to scare people, but when you have a virus, when it goes away, it doesn't mean you've cleared the virus. It just means the virus is not active. So if you think of chickenpox, right? So most people got chickenpox when they were a kid. That comes from a virus. But the reason adults can get shingles when they're an adult is from that same virus that moves through the body into nerves, and that's when they end up with shingles. So it was just viruses can stay inactive in the body for a long, long time.
Isn't it just so the immune system? Doesn't it suppress it or something?
A virus basically infects a cell, and then you have certain cells that basically would recognize that cell's infected when it's active. So you have T cells of the immune system, and these T cells, think of them like the alarm system. So if someone breaks into your house, you've got an alarm. Does that make sense? But then the B cells are like the soldiers. They're the ones who come and knock the shit out of someone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's good to have an alarm system, but it doesn't help if no one's in there to protect. So the T cells raise the alarm, and the B cells are what clear it. And what we're seeing is that many people have very poor adaptive immune health because they don't sleep well, they don't get good rest, mentally very stressed, hydration's poor, all of these things, and their things that all suppress that adaptive immune system.
Cool. So when they say don't just drink your water to keep clearing the infection into your stomach, it's rubbish. But in terms of, yes, drink water, keep hydrated, because it's important for your immune system, right? And keeping you when you dehydrate, you're stressed, right? This is what I tell guys all the time.
It's the stress on your body, right?
I say even when they're not lost fat and they're actually sticking to the nutrition, they're not losing fat, and then as soon as they start to drink 3 litres of water a day, the fat miraculously just starts to come off.
Dehydration is you know, most people, it's very hard to, you know, without going to biochemistry, which is really my background. Like if you go into the way the body works, we're kind of sold it in the wrong angle. So we are a human organism, right? As we are sitting here, we're human organisms. And then the way conventional medicine treats us is a system, a combination of systems. So an endocrine system, cardiovascular system, all this kind of stuff. But what you've got going on is, for me, the way I look at it, is the first stage of life is a single cell in biochemistry. So that's the first recognized stage of life. And then when you have many cells together, and we're talking the body's made up of trillions of cells, when you put many cells together, you create a tissue. So maybe that could be your lung tissue, if that makes sense. And then you have 4 different types of tissue. When you put certain ones together, you create an organ. Many organs together create a system. And so when I'm working with people, what I'm looking to do is to look at what the cell dysfunction is, rather than you've got a problem with your lungs. Does that make sense? Because if you can make the cell optimal, then actually you're making the whole system optimal.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing stuff, right? I think some of the team are just messaging now saying, wow, this is really interesting. So when it's actually explained like that, it's just not media hype junk. You know, I'm by just the record, guys, I'm not downplaying that anything's an issue, right? Everything that's going in the world, it isn't an issue. I'm not saying that, but when you actually put it into perspective, when you actually know the full science behind stuff. This hysteria that the government create now is literally just to protect these people that have got this immune system compromised, right? So to summarise that,
it's not to be morally questionable or anything like this, but if you look at the hardcore economists that are not thinking about anyone's life, they're basically saying, at this moment in time, they're saying we're tanking a global economy to save maybe 2 million people. And so regardless to what moral boundary you sit on, because if it's friends and family that are dying, of course, that's not a moral boundary you want to be on. But what I think people are losing perspective of is that 20,000 people a day die from hunger. 36,675 people a day die from cardiovascular disease. Completely preventable for the most part for people. And so I'm not saying this virus, because they're not infectious illnesses, everyone goes, well, they're not infectious. I'm like, yes, but also the recovery rate is 98%, 99% of the virus. So my argument with this is that not that we shouldn't, just let everybody get on and let
more daily, right?
What's that?
The suicide rate in the world is
it's thousands, right? Because if you think of the UK, what is it? It was 800,000 worldwide last year, suicide, something like that. So the thing is that I'm not trying to downplay what's going on with the virus and the people that are vulnerable, but what I'm saying is we're kind of losing perspective of actually understanding the severity of what a virus is compared to other completely, like even something close to my heart. If you think of digestive disease, like I overcome 10 odd years ago, 1.1 million people a year die from that. Right? And most people ask, well, how do you die from a digestive illness? Do you see what I mean? So the thing is that I think that the media's job is to sell attention. They have to advertise, they have viewerships, they have to sell papers, all of this stuff. So when has the media ever told the truth? It's like a better question to ask. Like, when have they just reported objectively? Because you have to remember the media all fall either on the left or the right of a political argument. So they're going to report one or the other side. So the thing is with it is that, if you want to do your mental health good, is like turn off the news. Like, honestly, just pay attention to the things that are going to directly affect your family, affect your physical life.
Pure example, last night, put my phone in airplane mode, left it in my bedroom, went and chilled out with Elle, woke up, I didn't look at any news till say 12, and all morning I was thinking about the current situation. I'd actually sort of forgot about what's happening in the world right now because you're not connected to it, right?
Yep.
So, and then as soon as you switch it on, then it starts racing through your head, and then you think this, you think that, and it's just crazy, right?
Well, there's two lots of people, right? Some people would say, if you're not watching the news, it's ignorance, and other people would say, if you're not watching the news, it's sanity. And so I fall on the not watching the news is sanity. Like, if there's something I need to know, there are enough people that know me that could reach out to me and tell me something that's relevant. Like, for instance, if I'm not able to move to my new place, the estate agent's going to tell us. I don't need to go on the news to hear that I couldn't move to my new place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is with it is, if you want to get good quality information, you are not getting it objectively from the news. Like, think about it. Over a week ago, they talked about shutting down the tube. And think how many people panicked because they go to work on the tube, right? First responders, all this kind of stuff. And that was never an option at that time. And they came out the next day and squashed it. But already people were panicking. Well, if I don't have the tube, how am I going to get to work? How am I going to get paid? Think of how much unnecessary stress that caused.
Well, last night,
the media
example,
went, Boris Johnson hinted at, he didn't hint at it at all. He just didn't answer the question.
Like last night, the 8:30 announcement, we sat down in front of the TV, go, right, we were expecting not going to be allowed out of your house at all without a slip. And he was just reinforcing what he'd already said. So it's like everyone's sat there. I had anticipated, right, that's going to be me for 3. So I was like, after 5 minutes, I was like, well, I'm already doing that. So I switched it off and kept going with my night, Yeah.
It's essentially saying, don't have parties. Don't be an idiot. That's basically it.
Cool. So, and I think, what's your sort of thoughts on. I think just to sum it up, I think we've got a shitload of content in there right now, and I'm going to watch back myself after this because I'm sure I've not taken every single bit in of that, all that stuff you've just been kind enough to share with us. So, in sort of a time frame to start seeing normality, like based off your sort of your judgment and looking at other countries that are sort of coming out the back end of this a bit more now. What I think it'd be really important to understand that what people say, it's going to be 12 months, we're going to be in lockdown for, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be that. What do you think the sort of actual timescale on this whole thing is roughly, right? From what you've gathered the stats on so far?
The thing is with it, it's not my professional area, statistics or anything like that. But if you look at what's going on for other places at this moment in time, so Italy are like just over 2 weeks into full lockdown, and they're seeing a decrease in cases. But they had a drop in deaths yesterday, but then it went up again today, for instance. So the thing is with it is that I think we need to get out of the delusion that it's going to be 3 weeks in lockdown. It will be longer, for sure, but it's not going to be 12 months. No. Like, this is no way, right? It's not going to happen. But I think if we have a look at it, there's lots of arguments all ways of it, because at the end of the day, how long will businesses last? Big businesses, so flight companies or all of these kind of things, they're not all going to be propped up. We don't have an endless fund to just print currency. You would think that by America at the moment, just printing $1 trillion.
Well, hasn't Trump said today he's trying to pass a thing through Congress to actually go, right, you isolate the people that got the problem, everyone's going back to work as normal with social distancing practices. He's trying to get that through today, right? So he's just sort of basically ignoring the whole thing.
The thing is with it is that I don't think they're a million miles off in their intent, because the thing is they tried to pass a bill that was a loan, it was essentially print 10% of their GDP, which is just a ginormous number, which, for them to be able to back, if anyone knows any about banking or economics, it's not possible. So the thing is with it, we're in a chartered unknown at this moment in time. Like, it's in a place where people are trying to find solutions and they don't have them.
No.
And because everything's been so reactive, it's been super poorly handled, then the thing is that we now are seeing the ramifications of it. I've worked online since end of 2013, 14 with my wife at home. So the thing is, isolation for us is pretty much day to day anyway. So it doesn't really make too much of a difference, right? Inconvenient shops are closed and things like this. But, think of the strains on marriages and stuff like this. People that go to work, have space from each other, then come back. All of a sudden, they don't have that anymore. They wake up, they have to be around each other all the time. Doesn't matter how good you get on. If you're starved of your own space and independence, it's going to be fireworks, that's for sure. Yeah. So I don't think it'd be 3 weeks. It won't be 12 months. But I think we're likely closer to a couple of months, probably.
Cool. And then we get through it, don't we? I think already, like, I'm adapting to it already. Like, I feel 100 times better today.
Well, the thing is, you're either going to adapt, or you're just going to use it as a validation why life can't be the way you want it.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, we had someone who thought their business was completely shut down physically, and I said I literally had a 20-minute Skype with them, and 20 minutes later they'd set up PayPal links and were already selling memberships to an online thing for that version of it. And we're really in a time now where you have to think on your feet and just be proactive with a solution. Not every business can do that, but that's why I would rather have a smaller business, let's say under 5 million, than I would try and have someone like a British Airways. You can't exactly be nimble. It's like trying to turn the Titanic, right? But with smaller businesses, like what you've done, 400 plus clients, it's still not small, but 400 plus clients, all of a sudden you can be like, you know what, we'll do this online lockdown thing. We can serve you this way. We can do it this way. We can give you extra accountability, whatever we need to do, because you can be nimble and you're not stuck in your ways. But if you have a big department store, where do they go?
Yeah.
So,
literally the only thing you can serve your clients with doing that is he's selling them
Yeah,
clothes.
I think you'll see. I think you'll see a lot of high street places go and not come back. For sure.
So yeah. So I think to sum it up, then really, we're going to be in this for a couple of months. Yeah, I think. But we make the most out of the situation. We keep ourselves healthy. We keep eating well, and we adapt and get over it. And then hopefully summer we're all going to be back outside and giving each other hugs and drinking beer in the beer garden again.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, what you're doing, James, is such an important part. And for any of the guys watching is, at any time, like the vulnerability bit is probably the bit that you need to understand greater than anything. Like if you've got shit going on or you've got things that are tough, like reaching out to someone isn't a weakness, right? Reaching out to someone is courage. And, every guy on here would like to think they have courage. But courage is just taking an action you're not certain on. So that means you have to be vulnerable to have courage. So if any of you think you've got courage, then you also have vulnerability because you're doing something that's uncertain. And that is only going to come up, especially in the group that you guys have got. It's only going to come back with support. Do you see what I mean?
Cool. So I'm definitely going to take a lot of that on board. I think just one or two questions that have just come up. Coming up now. So yeah, someone's just asked. So we'll think the economic pressure will stop the lockdown. That's a deep question.
Well, to be honest,
not stop it now, but think will.
I think like how long can it go on, right? Like when have we ever seen a government say we'll substitute 80% of someone's wage? Like that can only go on so long, and they would have already done their projections of how long that's going to last. So will the economic pressure push it? Yeah, for sure. Like there'll be the people in the big companies, the very, very big companies that have a lot of say, who do a lot of donations, that will be pushing politicians very hard to get things back open. So I think it will be the capitalism, let's say, that gets this back open. Because,
in a way as well, it doesn't seem right, does it? But on the flip side, the world's got to keep going round. So it's the balance, isn't it?
Well, if we still work within this system of exchanging currency and money and all this kind of stuff, they can't shut down the world for too long, right? Unless they come up with a whole new monetary system, which I don't think is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. All right. We just I think that's everyone. That's all the questions answered. There's just loads of really good feedback. So I'm sure you'll pick that up, Cliff, after this. But I just want to say massive thanks to Cliff for coming on today. And he's stuff mine every time I see him. When I'm in Cyprus with Justin and I bump into Cliff, it's always refreshing and gets your perspective. So thank you so much for coming on today, mate. I've definitely learned a lot. I'm sure the viewers have. Guys, if you want to follow Cliff, what's your page called again? I'll tag it straight after this. Forgot to do it. Is it Cliff?
Yeah, sure. Well, the easiest thing is our group, to be honest, our free group. It's the ARA, A for Romeo, A for Alpha method by Cliff and Marta. And that, honestly, like, we share a ton of stuff in there, like, because it's our kind of mindset and physical health is our real zone. That's kind of, we've done like 7 hours worth of trainings in there this week alone, I think, something like that. So they're all free.
Cool. So guys, ARA, what was it? ARA
method, yeah.
ARA method by Cliff and Marta. So definitely get involved with that, guys. And I appreciate your time, Cliff.
Pleasure. Thank you, my friend. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks so much. Cheers, dude. Thank you.